In the dense pack ice of Antarctica, where frozen barriers extend as far as the eye can see and the temperature plunges to extremes that would kill most marine life, a dark shape moves silently beneath the surface. A streamlined body weaves through narrow channels between ice floes, navigating a frozen maze with practiced ease. This is the Antarctic minke whale, the smallest of the baleen whales and perhaps the most enigmatic. While humpback whales journey thousands of miles to escape the Antarctic winter, minke whales remain, choosing to live year-round in the pack ice where few other whales venture. They are the ice whales, creatures so adapted to life within the frozen realm that they seem to prefer it to open ocean. They navigate where larger whales cannot go, feed where others cannot reach, and hide where even orcas struggle to follow. Their presence here, in this seemingly inhospitable environment, is not an accident or a mistake. It's a deliberate strategy refined over millennia, one that has allowed them to carve out a unique ecological niche in the most extreme marine environment on Earth. The Antarctic minke whale story is one of adaptation, survival, and the advantages of being small in a world of giants. The Antarctic minke whale is a study in streamlined efficiency. Adults typically measure between 23 and 35 feet in length, with females slightly larger than males. They weigh between 6 and 10 tons, making them the smallest of all baleen whales. To put this in perspective, a blue whale can be 3 times as long and weigh 20 times as much. Even their close relatives, the humpback whales we've already met, are significantly larger. But in the pack ice environment, being small is an advantage rather than a limitation. Their body is sleek and hydrodynamic, lacking the robust build of some larger whale species. The head is sharply pointed and relatively narrow, with a single prominent ridge running from the tip of the rostrum to the blowhole. This streamlined head design allows them to slip through narrow gaps between ice floes and to break through thin ice when necessary to create breathing holes. Their body tapers smoothly from head to tail, creating minimal drag as they swim through the water. The coloration of Antarctic minke whales is distinctive and beautiful. Their back and sides are dark grey to black, while their belly is white. But what makes them immediately recognizable is the pale grey chevron pattern behind their head, a light-colored marking that curves across their back and sides. Additionally, they have bright white bands across their flippers, a feature that distinguishes them from other minke whale species found in different parts of the world. When swimming near the surface, these white flipper bands flash in the water, creating brief moments of brightness against their dark bodies. Their dorsal fin is relatively tall and falcate, or curved, positioned about 2/3 of the way back along their body. This fin, combined with their streamlined shape, allows for quick, agile movements through the water. Unlike the slow, graceful swimming of right whales or the powerful, deliberate strokes of humpbacks, minke whales move with a sense of urgency and efficiency, their bodies built for speed and maneuverability rather than power or endurance. Like all baleen whales, minke whales lack teeth. Instead, their upper jaw contains baleen plates, fibrous structures made of keratin, the same material as human fingernails. Antarctic minke whales have between 230 and 270 pairs of baleen plates on each side of their mouth. These plates are yellowish-white in color and relatively short compared to those of larger baleen whales, measuring only about 8 inches long. The baleen acts as a filter, allowing water to pass through while trapping the small prey that the whales feed on. Their flippers are proportionally longer and more pointed than those of many other whale species, another adaptation for navigating through complex ice environments. These flippers provide precise control during slow-speed maneuvering, essential when moving through narrow channels between ice floes or when positioning themselves beneath ice to push upward and create breathing holes. What makes Antarctic minke whales truly remarkable is their habitat choice. While most baleen whales, including humpbacks, migrate to avoid the worst of Antarctic winter, minke whales remain in the pack ice zone year-round. They are the only baleen whale species to live permanently within the seasonal sea ice, making them true residents of the frozen realm rather than seasonal visitors. The pack ice zone is a dynamic, constantly changing environment. In winter, the ocean surface around Antarctica freezes, extending the ice coverage from about 1.5 million square miles in summer to over 7 million square miles in winter. This creates a vast frozen barrier that most whales avoid, migrating north to open water. But minke whales move deeper into this ice rather than away from it, following the ice edge as it expands northward and contracting southward with it as it retreats in summer. Within the pack ice, conditions are harsh. Temperatures in the water hover just above freezing, typically between 28 and 30 degrees Fahrenheit. The ice itself is constantly moving, driven by winds and currents. Ice floes crash together, creating pressure ridges. New leads, or channels of open water, appear as flows separate. Areas of open water can freeze over in hours during cold conditions, creating new barriers where pathways existed before. Navigating this environment requires constant awareness and adaptation. Yet minke whales thrive here. They've been observed swimming through pack ice with concentrations exceeding 80% ice coverage, meaning only 20% or less of the surface is open water. They navigate through narrow leads between ice floes, sometimes only slightly wider than their own body width. When they need to breathe and no open water is immediately available, they can break through ice up to 8 inches thick by pushing upward with their head, creating breathing holes much like Weddell seals do, though through less extreme ice thickness. Scientists believe minke whales remain in the pack ice for several reasons. First, the pack ice zone is incredibly productive during the spring and summer months. As ice melts, it releases nutrients and creates conditions ideal for massive blooms of phytoplankton. These microscopic plants support enormous swarms of Antarctic krill, the primary food source for minke whales. The krill concentrations beneath and around pack ice are among the highest anywhere in the Southern Ocean, providing abundant food for whales willing to navigate the challenging ice environment. Second, the pack ice provides refuge from predators. Type A orcas hunt minke whales regularly in open water, but they are less effective in dense pack ice where maneuverability is restricted, and where minke whales can escape into areas too tight or shallow for larger orcas to follow. The ice that makes life challenging for minke whales makes life even more challenging for their predators, creating a net survival advantage. Third, by remaining in Antarctic waters year-round, minke whales avoid the long migrations that other whales must undertake. Migration is energetically expensive, requiring months of travel during which whales typically don't feed or feed very little. By staying in place, minke whales can feed year-round, even during winter when food is less abundant, potentially gaining an energetic advantage over species that migrate. Antarctic minke whales are filter feeders, using their baleen plates to strain enormous quantities of water and capture the small prey suspended within. Their primary food source is Antarctic krill, the same small crustaceans that sustain so many other Antarctic species, from penguins and seals to much larger whales. An adult minke whale can consume over 1/2 ton of krill per day during peak feeding periods, though their daily intake varies seasonally depending on krill availability. Their feeding technique is efficient and adapted for their size. Minke whales engage in what's called lunge feeding or gulp feeding. They accelerate toward a concentration of krill with their mouth closed, then open their jaws wide at the last moment, engulfing a massive volume of water containing thousands or tens of thousands of krill. Their throat grooves, between 50 and 70 pleats that run from the chin to the belly, expand dramatically, allowing their throat to balloon outward and accommodate this enormous intake of water. Once their mouth is full, They close their jaws and use their tongue to force the water out through their baleen plates. The baleen acts like a sieve, allowing water to pass through but trapping the krill inside. The whale then swallows the concentrated mass of krill in one gulp. This entire process, from acceleration to swallowing, takes only seconds, and a whale may repeat it dozens or even hundreds of times during a feeding session. What makes minke whale feeding particularly interesting is how they exploit the pack ice environment. Krill often concentrate along the underside of ice floes, feeding on algae that grow on the ice's lower surface. Minke whales have learned to feed at these ice edges, sometimes swimming upside down or at steep angles to access krill aggregations directly beneath the ice. Their relatively small size and maneuverability allow them to feed in these confined spaces where larger whales cannot operate effectively. During the Antarctic summer, when daylight is nearly continuous and krill are abundant, minke whales feed intensively, building up blubber reserves that will sustain them through the leaner winter months. In winter, when darkness descends and primary productivity drops dramatically, krill become less abundant and more difficult to find. Minke whales continue to feed during winter but at reduced rates, living partially off their stored energy reserves while still hunting for whatever prey they can find. In addition to krill, Antarctic minke whales also consume small fish when available, particularly Antarctic silverfish and other species that inhabit the pack ice zone. However, krill remains their primary prey, constituting the vast majority of their diet throughout the year. Their specialization on krill has made them highly dependent on the health of krill populations, linking their survival to the entire Antarctic food web that begins with the phytoplankton blooms beneath melting ice. In the Southern Ocean, Antarctic minke whales occupy a unique and somewhat precarious position. They are predators of krill and small fish, but they are also prey for one of the ocean's most formidable hunters, the orca. Type A Orcas, which we encountered earlier in this series, specialize in hunting minke whales, making them the primary natural predator that adult minke whales face. Orca attacks on minke whales are sophisticated and coordinated. A pod of Type A Orcas will identify a minke whale, often spotting it when it surfaces to breathe, and initiate pursuit. Multiple orcas work together, taking turns chasing the whale to prevent it from resting. They coordinate their movements, cutting off escape routes and driving the minke whale toward open water where it's more vulnerable. The chase can last for hours, with the orcas systematically exhausting their prey. When the minke whale tires, the orcas close in for the kill. They deliver powerful bites to the flippers, tail, and eventually the head and body. Minke whales have been observed with serious injuries from orca attacks, including missing chunks of their tail flukes and deep bite wounds along their bodies. Not all attacks are successful. Many minke whales survive encounters with orcas, bearing scars as evidence, but enough attacks succeed to make orca predation a significant mortality factor for the species. The pack ice environment is central to minke whale survival strategy against orcas. When pursued in open water, minke whales are at a disadvantage. Orcas are faster over sustained periods and have greater endurance. But in dense pack ice, the dynamics shift. Minke whales are smaller and more maneuverable, able to navigate through narrow leads and channels where orcas struggle to follow. They can dive beneath ice floes and surface in small openings barely larger than their body, creating breathing holes if necessary. They can use the three-dimensional complexity of the pack ice environment to evade pursuers. Scientists have observed minke whales fleeing into progressively denser pack ice when pursued by orcas. The whales seem to deliberately head for the most ice-congested areas, where the maze-like environment provides maximum protection. Orcas, being larger and less adapted to tight spaces, often abandon pursuit when the ice becomes too dense. The minke whale's willingness to live permanently in the pack ice may be, at least in part, an anti-predator strategy, choosing a challenging environment where their main predators are less effective. Young minke whales are particularly vulnerable to predation. Calves are smaller, slower, and less experienced at navigating pack ice. They must stay close to their mothers for protection, but even maternal vigilance cannot always prevent attacks. Orcapods have been observed specifically targeting mother-calf pairs, attempting to separate the calf from its mother to make an easier kill. The survival rate of minke whale calves through their first year is not precisely known, but predation by orcas is likely one of the major causes of calf mortality. Antarctic minke whales reach sexual maturity at around 7 to 8 years of age, though some individuals may mature earlier or later depending on environmental conditions and food availability. Once mature, females give birth approximately once every 1 to 2 years, though the exact breeding interval is still being studied. The gestation period is believed to be around 10 to 11 months, similar to other baleen whale species of comparable size. Mating likely occurs during the Antarctic winter from June through August. Though direct observations of minke whale mating are extremely rare due to the species' preference for dense pack ice and the difficulty of conducting research during the Antarctic winter. Males and females appear to be solitary or found in very small groups most of the time, but they presumably come together briefly for mating before separating again. There is no evidence of long-term pair bonds or extensive courtship rituals as seen in some other whale species like humpbacks. Calves are born during the following Antarctic summer, from December through February, when food is most abundant and conditions are relatively favorable. A newborn minke whale calf is about 9 feet long and weighs approximately 600 pounds. From birth, the calf can swim and surface to breathe on its own, though it remains closely dependent on its mother for nutrition and protection. The mother-calf bond is strong during the nursing period, which lasts approximately 4 to 6 months. Like all whale milk, minke whale milk is extremely rich in fat, typically containing around 30 to 40% fat content. This allows the calf to grow rapidly, gaining weight quickly and building the blubber layer it will need to survive in cold Antarctic waters. The calf nurses frequently, gaining the strength and size necessary for independent survival. During the nursing period, the mother is intensely protective. She positions herself between her calf and any potential threats, including boats, other whales, and especially orcas. If threatened, she may attempt to shepherd her calf into dense pack ice where safety is more assured. The energetic cost of lactation is substantial for the mother, requiring her to feed intensively throughout the nursing period to produce milk while maintaining her own body condition. Weaning occurs gradually, with the calf beginning to experiment with feeding on krill while still nursing. By around 6 months of age, the calf is nutritionally independent, though it may remain in loose association with its mother for some time after weaning. Young minke whales must quickly learn the skills necessary for survival: how to find and catch krill efficiently, how to navigate through pack ice safely, how to locate breathing holes when ice coverage is heavy, and how to evade orcas and other potential threats. Minke whales that survive to adulthood can live for up to 50 years, though the average lifespan is probably somewhat shorter due to predation, disease, and other mortality factors. Older individuals can be identified by the accumulation of scars on their bodies, particularly scars from orca toothaches, ice abrasion, and encounters with ships and fishing gear. Estimating the population of Antarctic minke whales has proven challenging due to their preference for pack ice environments that are difficult and dangerous to survey. However, based on various survey methods including visual counts from ships and aircraft, acoustic monitoring, and statistical modeling, scientists estimate the Antarctic minke whale population at somewhere between 500,000 and 700,000 individuals. This makes them one of the most abundant baleen whale species in the Southern Ocean and indeed in the entire world. Their relatively healthy population status stands in contrast to many other whale species that were devastated by commercial whaling. Antarctic minke whales were hunted, but not as intensively as larger species like blue whales, fin whales, and humpback whales. Their smaller size meant less oil and meat per animal, making them less economically attractive to whalers when larger whales were still available. As larger whale populations were depleted, hunting pressure on minke whales increased, particularly in the latter half of the 20th century. However, they were never reduced to the critically low levels that some other species reached. Commercial whaling for minke whales essentially ended with the implementation of the International Moratorium on Commercial Whaling in 1986. However, Japan continued to hunt minke whales in Antarctic waters under what it termed scientific whaling, a program that was widely criticized by conservation organizations and many governments as commercial whaling in disguise. This controversial program continued until 2019, when Japan withdrew from the International Whaling Commission and ceased whaling in Antarctic waters, though it resumed commercial whaling in its own territorial waters. Today, Antarctic minke whales face threats that are less direct but potentially more pervasive than hunting. Climate change is altering the Antarctic ecosystem fundamentally. The extent and duration of sea ice coverage are changing, with overall trends toward reduced ice coverage in many areas. Since minke whales are so intimately associated with pack ice environments, changes in ice conditions could profoundly affect their habitat, feeding opportunities, and survival strategies. Changes in ice conditions also affect Antarctic krill, the primary prey of minke whales. Krill populations have shown signs of decline in some regions, possibly linked to warming waters, reduced ice coverage, and changes in the phytoplankton communities that krill depend on. If krill populations decline significantly, minke whales would face food shortages, potentially leading to reduced reproductive rates, increased mortality, and population decline. Ocean acidification, caused by increasing carbon dioxide absorption by seawater, poses another long-term threat. Acidification affects the entire marine food web, from phytoplankton upward, potentially disrupting the ecosystem processes that support krill populations and, by extension, minke whales. The full impacts of ocean acidification are still being studied, but the potential for widespread ecosystem disruption is a serious concern. Ship strikes and entanglement in fishing gear are additional threats, though probably less significant for minke whales than for some other species. Minke whales are relatively fast and agile, making them less vulnerable to ship strikes than slower-moving species like right whales. However, collisions do occur, particularly in areas of heavy shipping traffic. Entanglement in fishing nets and lines can injure or kill minke whales, though again, the impact on the overall population appears to be relatively limited. Despite these challenges, Antarctic minke whales remain abundant and widespread. Their population is considered stable, and they are currently listed as least concern by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Continued monitoring and research will be essential to detect any changes in population trends and to understand how climate change and other factors are affecting these remarkable whales that have made the Antarctic pack ice their permanent home. Beneath the Antarctic pack ice, in a world of blue shadows and shifting barriers, an Antarctic minke whale glides silently through a narrow lead between ice floes. Its streamlined body moves with practiced ease through spaces where larger whales could not venture. It surfaces in a small opening, exhales forcefully, takes several quick breaths, then slips beneath the surface once more, disappearing into the frozen maze. This is its home, its chosen realm, a place of ice and cold that would seem forbidding to most creatures, but to the minke whale is perfect. They are the ice whales, the small giants that chose the frozen south and made it their own. In doing so, they remind us that survival is not always about being the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes, it's about finding the one place where your particular gifts, your specific adaptations, give you an advantage that no one else possesses. But the Antarctic holds still more secrets, more creatures that have found their own unique ways to thrive in this realm of ice and cold at the bottom of the world.